Reach Young Adult Ministry sermons online from Tuesday, July 28th, 2020, featuring guest speaker Taylor Gabbert from the series Frequently Asked Questions, entitled Lunch Money, about forgiveness from Matthew 18:21 through 35.
All right. Welcome. All right, tonight we're going to talk about forgiveness. I'm going to read you the FAQ. We're in a series, Frequently Asked Questions. This is the FAQ we got. How do you tangibly love or forgive someone that has deeply hurt you, especially when you are called to respect them? For example, parents. All right, it's a really involved question. There's a lot of implications there. It's a little bit harder, I think, to forgive people that are closer to you, right? It's Dante's Inferno, the deepest circle of hell was reserved for traitors, right? So when we're hurt by someone close to us, it hurts worse, right? Those are the people we aren't guarded against. Those are the people we don't expect to hurt us, right? So how do I forgive the people that I'm supposed to respect, the people closest to me when they hurt me? Now, Webster defines forgiveness to cease to feel resentment against, pardon one's enemies, to give up resentment of or claim to requital, forgive an insult, to grant relief from payment of, to forgive a debt. Now, here's the thing about forgiveness when it comes to Christianity. I really think we are really bad about this. We would all agree that forgiveness is a big part of Christianity, right? Like, that's foundational. It's pretty much, it's as easy as, what's the Sunday school answer, right? Jesus, all right? It's right up there with that. Forgiveness, Jesus, God, Moses, right? All those are all the Sunday school answers. Now, here's the thing, though. We're really actually pretty bad about it, and here's what I mean. Your friend slights you in some way, says something rude to you, and then what do? They come back the next day, and they go, oh, man, I was having a really bad day, and I'm really sorry, and can you forgive me? And we go, oh, of course I forgive you. And then we pat ourselves on the back. See, I'm good at forgiveness, right? But the thing is, like, the key there is that you already like that person, right? It's really easy to forgive somebody that you've already liked, right? But then what happens, right? It can be as small as the dude that cut you off in traffic, and what do we do then, right? You flip that guy the bird, right? That guy didn't even have a chance to be forgiven, right? And then it could be all the way as big as somebody major in your life, somebody harms you, and then what do? You hang on to that one. The guy in traffic is forgotten the next day, but the big ones you just hang on to. Because that person you don't like. You don't have a predisposition towards that person. So we pat ourselves on the back because we forgive so quickly our brothers and sisters that we love, and then we just hang on to things with everybody else. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn to Matthew chapter 18, verse 21, starting in verse 21, and we're going to look at a conversation that Jesus has with the disciples about forgiveness. All right? So if you turn with me to verse 21, I'll read verse 21 and 22. It says, Then Peter approached him and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? As many as 7 times? I tell you, not as many as 7, Jesus replied, but 70 times 7. Okay, so there's a couple things you need to know about what's going on right here. First of all, the first thing you need to know is that back at this day and time, Hebrew teaching was that you forgave somebody 3 times. That was common Hebrew cultural teaching. 3 times, that's how many times you forgive somebody. Now, if you don't know Peter very well, Peter is... how do I put this? Peter's the guy that's always putting his foot in his mouth. He's really overzealous to prove just how great of a follower of Christ he is. So what Peter's doing right here is have you ever done this? You ask a question that you already have the impressive answer to, right? So what Peter's doing is he goes, but God, how many times should we forgive them? I know that most people say 3, but I think we should more than double that and go to 7. How good do I look right now, right? That's what Peter's doing. He's trying to be holy. Now, there's an allusion here as well because in Genesis it says that Cain would be avenged 7 times. So part of what Peter's getting at is he's saying, well, I think we if evil is repaid 7 times, then we should at least forgive 7 times, right? And he's trying to look really good. Now, what happens here is that Jesus says, I would tell you not just 7 times, but 70 times 7 times. It's 490. Don't rack your brains. That's the math equation, right? It's 490. But here's the deal. The issue, it's not a number, all right? Here's what's not happening. You're not supposed to go, listen, man, you have punched me in the face 490 times. One more time, and we got a problem, all right? That's not what's happening. It's not a tally. It's not a marker. This is the amount of times that I'm supposed to go to. Now, the other thing here is that a lot of your translations will say 70 times 7. Another way to interpret this is actually 77. Now, the reason that could be the case is because the other part of, it's in Genesis 4, verse 24, there's a man named Lamech, and he is bragging about how evil he is. And he's saying, in the same way that Cain was avenged 7 times, I will repay evil 77 times. And what he's saying is not 77 times, that's how many times I'll get vengeance. What he's saying is, I will repay evil with evil as many times as it takes. I will always repay evil with evil. So in the same way, what Jesus is saying here is he's not saying 77 times. He's not saying 490 times. What he's saying is an unlimited number of times. That's how many times that you should forgive someone. This answer would have been shocking, right? I started with 3, right? So we've now gone from 3 to infinity, right? So this answer would have been just astounding, especially after Peter really thought he was impressing people by saying 7, right? So the other thing here is it's not, we're not called on to be doormats, all right? So part of reconciliation, not forgiveness, part of reconciliation is that person wants to be forgiven, right? Is asking for forgiveness. Now, forgiveness is on your part. You forgive because you've been commanded to forgive. But reconciliation requires that person to be seeking forgiveness. So the other part of this is not 498, 499. You're not just sticking around. If somebody has perpetuated sin on you, 490 times, you should go somewhere else. That's okay, all right? So moving forward, here's what happens. Jesus sees the shocked look on the disciples' faces, right? They're like, how many times? And so he says, okay, we're going to tell a story. We're going to use a parable. Because parables was how Jesus got across his point in a way that the disciples could grasp. And we see in some parables, they couldn't even grasp the point of the parables, right? He spends a lot of time explaining the parables. So if we move into verse 23, he starts the parable. He says, for this reason, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle accounts, one who owed him 10,000 talents was brought before him. Since he did not have the money to pay it back, his master commanded that he, his wife, his children, and everything he had be sold to pay the debt. At this, the servant fell face down before him and said, be patient with me, and I will pay you everything. Then the master of that servant had compassion, released him, and forgave him the loan. The servant went out and found one of his fellow servants. Stopping in verse 27. So, here's the first thing we need to talk about, the word servant in there. Now, some of your translations might say slave. Something you need to understand about what's happening here is that this is not like a slave like we would think of a slave. This is, the parable here is kind of like a Far Eastern monarchy type, and what we're seeing is that in reference to the king, everybody's a slave. No one is equal to the king, right? So this servant, this slave, is probably a high-ranking official. He's someone that works closely for the king, but judging by the amount of the debt, he's probably a tax collector. The point is, he is a slave in comparison, right? But he's not like a slave like we would see it. This is similar to the way Paul would say he's a slave to Christ, right? Paul understood that in reference to our king, we are slaves, right? We're servants. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the 10,000 talents. All right, so the most common estimate of 10,000 talents that I found in the commentaries was this is about $12 million. Okay, now the top end of this is about $60 million. But let's take a time out for a second. Who in here can pay a $12 million debt? One person. All right, so the point is, we don't really need to get bent out of shape about whether it's 12 million or 60 million, because I'm pretty sure all of us combined cannot touch a $12 million debt, right? Now, you might think, well, you know, if Bill Gates was here, he could pay a $60 million debt, right? Okay, so let's talk about 10,000. 10,000 in the Greek, that was their highest number. Don't ask me why they couldn't count past 10,000. I don't know. But that was their max number. And the number, the word for the number 10,000 was also, could be translated as immeasurable, uncalculable. Sorry, I'm not going to say that word again. All right. Basically, 10,000 was, we've lost track. You owe so much money, we don't even want to count it anymore, right? So this is an immeasurable debt. It's unpayable. It's almost unknowable, right? So this debt in the parable represents our sin debt, right? That's the point. It's an unpayable, unknowable debt. Now, here's the question. How do you get that kind of debt, right? Let's just talk about the parable. Let's talk about the money. How do you get that kind of debt? We do it all the time, though, right? Because what happens when you're living in sin? You usually find a corner, and you hope nobody notices you, especially God, and you just start racking it. Just, hey, I'll take some of this sin, I'll take some of this debt. It's okay. And you just stay over here, and you hope no one notices. And even though we know in the back of our head there's a reckoning coming, we just keep gathering in. You ever seen that meme with the Simpsons character sitting in the back of the bus? He goes, I'm in danger, right? That's us. We're just back here. We're just drawing in debt, and we're like, it's coming. I'm in a bad spot, but I'm gonna keep shoveling it in, right? And that's all we're doing. So this guy, he's racked up this immeasurable debt, and he has just ignored that consequences are coming, right? Now, the interesting thing about this, this starts with the king wants to make an account with his servants, right? He's gathered them up. It's time to pay your debts. Now, Martin Luther wrote on this passage, and he said that this accounting by the king is a blessing. All right, so let's talk about this for a second. If somebody owed you $12 million, and you said, I'm going to have you thrown in jail if you don't pay up, and then somebody else, third party, was like, that's kind of mean. You'd be like, are you kidding me? He owes me, did you hear me when I said $12 million, right? The king is justified, right? He's justified. But we do this to God all the time. I have to go to hell for my sins? It's kind of mean. You owe an immeasurable debt, right? Now, picture the accounting as a brick wall, right? There are three options when you're headed towards the brick wall. The first option is that you see the brick wall, and you go, God, can we do something else? The second option, and my personal favorite, is you close your eyes, put your head down, and you run as fast as you can into the brick wall. And then when you wake up, a little bruised, you go, okay, God, can we do something else, right? And then the third option is you do that same thing, but then when you wake up, you go, I can't believe God would let me run into this brick wall. And we do that all the time, right? But here's the thing. All three of those options have the same thing in common. If not for the brick wall, you'd still be going that direction. The brick wall is a blessing because the brick wall is how God stops you from continuing the wrong way. Now, it's up to you how much it hurts, but the blessing remains there no matter what. Now, let's talk about how God forgives us, right? What happens when somebody hurts you and then they come and ask for forgiveness? You do this. You ready? You do this. how do I know that you're really sorry? I guess we'll see. We'll see if you do it again. Right? And then that's what we think God does. We think God's got his arms crossed, and he's tapping his foot, and he's like, I don't know, you've done this 50 other times. I guess come back when you mean it. Listen, okay, let's talk about the prodigal son, right? That's the perfect analogy for how God forgives. You ready for this? The prodigal son is walking back to his dad's house. He's already hit the brick wall, right? And he's walking back, and he's got a plan. I'm going to tell my dad that I'm sorry. And I'm going to tell my dad that his servants, they're taken care of. And I need him to just let me be. He's working it out on his own. He's got a plan. Now, when the dad sees him coming in the distance, what we would do, right, is we'd go, oh, look who's coming back. Pick up the paper, fake read it, like, oh, you finally came back, did you? Well, I guess get to work. Dinner will be ready soon. No, what does the prodigal son's father do? He sees him in the distance, and he sprints towards him. That's the image that God is when he forgives us. It's not that we have it all worked out. It's not that you have every little detail of how you're going to make up for this figured out. It's not even that you're 100% sorry. You could just be desperate. There are plenty of times we come back to God just desperate, right? Maybe you even stood up after that first brick wall run in, and you were like, maybe if I get another running start, right? And so you do that a couple times, and then you go to God with your head down, and you're like, the brick wall's not given. And that's the thing is, God isn't standing there like, did you learn your lesson? God's like, oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness, let's go. I've got you. Hang on, because we're running this way now. Right? God forgives us instantly, and that's the example for forgiveness in our lives, right? That's what how we're called to forgive. So let's look at the last part of this, starting in verse 28. The servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. He grabbed him, started choking him, and said, "Pay what you owe." At this, his fellow servant fell down and began begging him, "Be patient with me, and I will pay you back." But he wasn't willing. Instead, he went and threw him into prison until he could pay what he owed. All right. Anybody want to take a guess at what 100 denarii is? Okay. In our money. $17. It's estimated $17. It's lunch money, right? You bought somebody's lunch. Now, I need you to hear me on this. When we sin against each other, the point of this $17 is that it's not that our sin against each other is petty. We can hurt each other, right? We hurt each other all the time. The point is not that our sin is petty. It's that our sin against each other, our debt to each other in comparison to our debt to God is petty. Here's the thing. You might be holding on to something. There may be a few of you in this room that have been hurt in a way that you're holding on to something big. But what's the case for 99% of us? We are actually holding on to something petty. And not even in reference to what we owe God. It's just petty. But we hang on to it. We focus on our lunch money debt, our $17. Now, here's the thing. Have you ever said this phrase? Well, she's hated me for a long time. Or that time he looked at me sideways in the 5th grade. Right? Okay, let's go with this for a second. Let's say you're right. That person has hated you since the 5th grade. Does that excuse you from doing what God has commanded you to do? Does that allow you off the hook? You now get to hold this grudge back at them? No. It doesn't matter what somebody else is doing. You need to see it for the $17 debt it is compared to what you owe God. Now, there are 2 reasons that we don't forgive people. One is internal and one is external. I mean, they happen simultaneously. But the internal one is entitlement. I'm owed something, I'm owed respect. I'm owed whatever, fill in the blank. You're entitled to something, and that $17 debt that you're entitled to is more important than anything else going on in that person's life or yours. Right? That's the internal one. And then the external one is how we see other people. Now, here's the thing. When we see people in reference to ourselves, and we focus on that entitlement, that becomes bigger than anything else going on. But what we're called to do is we're called to see people through God's eyes, right? How does God view people? Now, we've talked about this a lot. We're called to see things eternally, and we're called to focus on the unseen, right? Like, we know that. That's easy. But let's think about this in reference to people. There are only two options. If that person is unsaved, bear with me, what's more important? Your $17 debt, no matter how not petty it may be, or the fact that that person is risking eternity separated from God the Father. See, when you see somebody who needs forgiveness, not just from you, but from God, it should break your heart. Because that person, there's going to be a reckoning day, and they are going to be paying that debt forever. All of a sudden, your $17 debt with them looks a lot smaller. So let's talk about this person saved, right? Now what do we get to do? We get to do this one. Well, they should know better, right? Because it's a Christian, so now I get to hold a grudge. No. Have you ever, what's it like when you're not walking in the Lord? What's it like when you're not living in the Spirit and you're not doing the things that you want to be doing? You're miserable. You are miserable. So here's the thing. If you're looking at your brother or your sister and they are walking away from God, and you should be brokenhearted for your brother or your sister because they are not in communion with the loving God that we know. When are you happy? You're happy when you wake up in the morning and you dig into the Word of God and you let God walk you through the day and fulfill you and produce fruit in you. And if you know that that person's not getting that feeling, they can only be miserable. They can only be in denial, and that should break your heart. So here's the bottom line. It doesn't matter, saved or unsaved. When somebody needs that forgiveness, whether it's temporary because they're saved or eternally because they're not saved, it should break your heart. And if it doesn't break your heart, it's because you're not looking at them the way that God sees them. You're looking at them the way that you see them. And you're focusing on your entitlement to your $17 debt. What if that person doesn't want forgiveness? Philip told me one time, bitterness is the only poison we drink hoping the other person dies. Have you ever been hateful towards somebody for a long period of time? It will eat you from the inside out. You cannot live with that kind of hatred. You are called upon, remember, you're called upon to forgive. Reconciliation involves both parties. I'll acknowledge that, all right? But what you don't get to do is 491, cut them. That's it. They're out. They're out of the will. No. You are called to forgive them regardless of how they are acting, regardless of what they are living up to. Okay. So let's move on to the last portion, starting in verse 31. When the other servants saw what had taken place, they were deeply distressed and went and reported to their master everything that had happened. Then, after he summoned them, his master said to him, "You wicked servant, I forgave you all the debt because you begged me. Shouldn't you also have had mercy on your fellow servant, as I had mercy on you?" And because he was angry, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he could pay everything that was owed. So also my heavenly Father will do to you unless every one of you forgives his brother or sister from your heart. All right, so a couple of things. First of all, we need to clarify something. it's a parable. What you don't do with parables is you don't apply them as a blanket across all of theology. If we took this ending and we dissected it to the nth degree, there would be some very deep theological questions. Don't overthink it. It's a parable. It'd be like taking a Mother Goose rhyme and trying to make a theological statement off of it, okay? So parables have a specific point. And if you get sidetracked from that specific point, it gets weird, all right? So stay on track. Let's talk about torture. Going back to this idea of being miserable. Why, when we walk outside of the Spirit, God loves us, right? And we're walking outside the Spirit, and everything just seems to be going horribly. Why is that? That's the brick wall. The torture is not because God is vindictive. It's not because he hates you. It's because he needs you to get to a place where you say, whenever I'm doing things on my own, pretty much everything is terrible. That's why we get tortured. That's why life sucks sometimes. But then when I take a step backwards and I start doing things the way that God wants me to do them, suddenly I don't feel as tortured or as miserable. Life's better, right? All right. So let's talk about the from the heart piece, how this ends. If you've known me for very long, you would know that about 2 years ago, I went through a divorce. I found out that my wife at the time was having an affair. There's some evidence that there had been multiple over a long period of time, but I only obviously found out in the last one. To be honest, the worst part of the process was the lying. Oh boy. The worst part of the process was the lying. The lying is what will drive you crazy. I didn't. Landon did, though. Landon rode his motorcycle. Okay, I'm good. Okay. So here's the thing. The worst part was really, it was the lying. And here's the thing. The lying will drive you crazy, right? If you've ever been in that situation, you hit a point where you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. You question everything. It will drive you insane. It will literally drive you insane. You start second-guessing your own thoughts. Now, without going into just an excessive amount of detail on that, a week before I found out that I was being cheated on, she said to me in a conversation, I find myself wishing that you would go to Afghanistan and die so that we wouldn't be married anymore. Listen, if you've ever heard me talk about billboard sins and back pocket sins, right? So a billboard sin is the sin that the enemy's always pointing to you in your life. That's the one you hate doing. Makes you feel terrible. And the devil's always going, look at that. You are worthless. Look at that. What if people knew about that? And you go to God all the time and you're praying, like, God, please get this billboard sin out of my life, right? You want to know why the billboard sin won't leave? It's because holding the door open for the billboard sin is your back pocket sin. Your back pocket sin is the one you enjoy. It's the one you don't want to give up. It's oftentimes the one that you'll justify. You know what my back pocket sin was for at least a year? How much I hated that woman. And I didn't have one single solitary person in a year look me in the face and tell me that I was sinning in that hatred. How could you? If I told you that amount, if I told you what I just told you with more detail, and I ended the conversation with, and I hate her guts. How many of you would go, well, hold on now, that's a sin? No, most of you would go, yeah, I would too, right? And no one calls you out on that. It's justifiable. But guess what justifiable is? It's just my fancy word for holding on to my $17 debt. Because do you know what I figured out about her? As much as she hurt me, she needs Jesus, or she is going to be hurting a lot longer. And that breaks my heart, because I'm not capable of hating someone to the point of wishing that they would be separated from God for eternity. When is your $17 debt going to matter less than the reconciliation of that person with God? Now, keep in mind, she would tell you that she didn't do anything wrong and that she deserved to be happy. So, did she ask me for forgiveness at any point, or apologize, or try to be reconciled? No. So what did I not do? I didn't just stay there as a doormat, right? I didn't just count to 491. But whether or not she is ever repentant, whether or not she is ever reconciled, doesn't change my call and my command to forgive her. And let me tell you something, I have never been more miserable in my entire life than the year I spent hating another person. Listen, if you've never experienced, if it's hard for you to forgive, it may be because you've never experienced the forgiveness that you need from the Father. If you've never felt that debt that you owe disappear, it may be really hard for you to understand how to forgive the petty debt, the lunch money. Now here's the thing. You owe the bank $12 million. Somebody owes you $20. And they give you $20. Where does it go? Straight towards your debt, right? So if the bank forgives you your $12 million debt, what right do you have to turn around and freak out on somebody for the $20 they owe you? That's the picture. That's the parable. The point is, no one owes you more than you owe God, and God forgave your debt. This is not up for debate. This is not something that we get to as Christians just kind of put on the back burner. The Bible is very clear that if you can't forgive others, you're in a hot spot with God. If you have never experienced that forgiveness, I would tell you to find somebody in this room who has. I would tell you not to go home tonight without letting someone who's experienced that forgiveness help you get there. There's plenty of us in this room that know that immeasurable forgiveness, that $12 million debt that's been wiped clean. And if you haven't experienced that, don't waste another second worrying about $17 debts when you owe something you can never pay back on your own. Let one of us help you to that place.
What's up, everybody? This is Philip Jackson, pastor young adults at Evergreen Church. I want to invite you to come to Reach. We meet every Tuesday evening at 6:30 at Evergreen Church, just east of Mingo on 111th Street. For more information, check out our website, reachtulsa.org. You can connect with us on social media and on Instagram by searching for reach.tulsa. Also, be sure to subscribe to our content for the latest sermons and updates. You can also find us on Spotify, iTunes, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Bring your glory down. Come fill your people with revival sound. Oh, rain down your fire, come ignite our hearts. May we burn for you, Lord, like a million stars, like a million stars. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We see